Dana. No, you can look around. We're going to be doing a recording, though, shortly. But you're welcome to look around or sit if you want. Sure. A minute's been up, but let's see what she... Okay. 10 seconds, is that what she said? I think she said 10 seconds. Welcome to St. Mark's Episcopal... I can't talk. Let's do that again. Welcome to St. Mark's Episcopal Cathedral. This is our part 2 in our Docent series. My name is Jay Nuring. I am the art curator of the cathedral. And we're visiting today with Jim Jacobson and Linda Shaleen. Thank you both for coming. This is really exciting. I'm so happy that you joined us. Jim, I'm going to start with you. I've got a question. You started coming to St. Mark's Episcopal Cathedral when you were 20 years old in 1954, and you said that you started coming when the rest of the world came to St. Mark's. What did you mean by that?
Well, that was the year that, thanks to the efforts of our bishop, that the Archbishop of Canterbury held the first worldwide Anglican Communion. Congress, and after much discussion agreed to have it here in Minneapolis. So we had literally people from all over the world coming to Minneapolis as part of the church. And the opening ceremony, which was in the old Minneapolis auditorium, was a splendor of the variance in Eucharistic, or I should say, clergy design, the vestments and so forth. It was, and the music, and thousands of people. It was just an incredible experience.
So really, for the first time, you got a glimpse at St. Mark's in a way that nobody else had really experienced.
Yes.
I mean, as a first-time member and observer, right?
Yes.
And fairly impressionable. That was a while ago, so...
Well, yes. There was a second part of that. I was a college student and member of Canterbury Club at the university, which was, at that time, was the church-wide organization for college students. And we had a group called Canterbury Players, and we were designated as their official entertainment in a presentation of Gilbert and Sullivan's Yeomen of the Guard. Mm. And that was also a thrilling experience.
So for those who are listening but maybe not watching us in this video, we are sitting right now in the chancel between the nave and the altar in the cathedral. And just at the bottom of the steps beyond the chancel is a beautiful inset in the stone that commemorated this event in 1954. Talk more about this, I guess you would call it a seal of sorts?
It's the compass rose. It's the official seal of the Anglican Communion because of the fact that it's taken from the maritime idea of from all over the world. Mm-hmm. And it's accompanied by the Greek, and the truth shall make you free.
And I believe you had said at one point there's only one other
Oh, no, there's more than one.
Oh, okay, okay.
But
there's one in the Canterbury Cathedral,
yes,
correct?
yes.
And
I think ours is prettier because theirs is all in the stone and dark and the gold, and we have colors in it, and I think ours is more attractive.
Linda, you have been with the cathedral for many, many years as well. Linda Shalene, for those that do not know, you are the cathedral archivist and historian. And I understand that you worked under your predecessor by the name of Mary. Tell me more about Mary and her last name.
Mary Cecilia. She came here in the 1980s, and she just kind of sat in the back for a while. And finally, I think it was Betty Hancock who invited her to participate more fully. And she answered, "Oh, I'm just a tourist." Whereupon Betty said, "We all are just tourists." And that is how Mary started to be more active. She started working in the library, and she started teaching EFM, that's Education for Ministry, classes. And then they were looking for somebody to light a spark in the education program. And so they went through a national search and came up empty-handed and decided, well, we've got the person right here. So they hired Mary to put a spark in education, and she certainly did that, and then some.
And she actually contributed something really wonderful to the cathedral by writing the first history book, correct?
Second.
The second history book.
Second history book.
Right. And history, I know, is something very near and dear to your heart, and you speak very fondly of the architect, Edwin Hewitt. And I know you have a lot of great stories about Edwin, but one thing that I keep going back to was when you were telling me about him traveling in Europe and sketching different cathedrals and would come back to the United States with ideas about design and architecture and things of that nature. Talk more about that.
Well, what he often did was go into a church that was looking to build a new structure, and he'd open up his sketchbook and say, "These are the cathedrals in Europe. What would you like?" Mm-hmm. And the one, and this is Mary who told me about this, is Hennepin Avenue Methodist wanted Ely Cathedral. And so you really can't see that from the ground. But one time I was up on the 15th floor of the Kenwood across the street, and when you look down, you see, oh, that is a model of Ely Cathedral.
Interesting.
It's
Well, as we know, Edwin Hewitt really single-handedly designed everything in this cathedral for the most part, from the carvings to the tile to the layout of the windows, and was quite a Renaissance man himself. I mean, he painted, correct?
He painted the triptych in the chapel.
In the Hewitt Chapel.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about that, Jim.
Well, it's the incarnation. And as a matter of fact, I think that would be the Incarnation Chapel, were it not for the fact that it's dedicated in memory of the Hewitt daughter. And that's how it got the name Hewitt Chapel. And in his associate, Mr. Rubens, painted the tympanum above it in the arch. So this was a very talented group. And then, of course, they incorporated a group of German carvers to do the incredible carving that we have in this building. Many of our visitors marvel at the wood carving we have. And it's a reflection of of the training that the brother leaders that had in Oberammergau. I'll say it yet. Having been there, I've seen a lot of the carving there. But,
Sure.
The team that they put together, the ideas that they put together, for example, telling the story in windows, which I think is so graphic. It dates back to the early church when people were not literate.
Right.
But at the same time, it conveys an important message
Right.
that this is what we're about.
Well, it was storytelling before there was narration.
Yes.
Correct. Right.
Yes.
Spatial storytelling, using the architecture, the built environment to communicate to the people.
Yes.
Well, and I think, Linda, you were telling me this. Hewitt was really a master at repeating architectural themes. And I know he did that quite a bit here at St. Mark's as well. I think one example was the spire of Sainte-Chapelle. Tell me a little bit more about that and where that occurs in the cathedral.
Well, of course, it's over the font, carving over the font. Then there's these two figures in the back of the church, the two polychromed mahogany.
Yeah.
And there's a repeat there. Both figures have that same spire.
I mean, classic architectural study, repetition. And we find that in all the arts. I mean, it could be literature, it could be choreography, it could be music, but, repeating the same theme is indicative of really good design, and so that makes perfect sense to me. I think that spire example also occurs at the very top of the crown of the bell tower on the outside, on the exterior facade. I remember seeing something similar and going, oh, that looks a lot like the Sainte-Chapelle spire that's above the baptismal font.
Oh, yes, there it is again.
There it is again. It keeps repeating. Now, you made a recent discovery about the font, and I don't know that a lot of people know this, because up until now, people were led to believe that the baptismal font that has the cap, the crown, which is the spire we've been talking about, did not come from the original church on 6th Street between Nicollet and Marquette. Is that correct?
Right. Well, I was reading a 1907 newspaper article about the taking down of the 6th Street building. And it said the precious relics that came from the 6th Street building included the windows that are in the library, two pews that are down right outside All Saints Chapel, the altar in Whipple, that's now in Whipple, and the baptismal font, marble. And so, there's a marble font. It's the only piece of marble in the building. So my first thought was, well, that must be the font that came from. But then I found record that font was a donation in memory of a person in the Lyman family. And there's a picture in a 1912 yearbook that shows a very simple white marble font. Where that font went, who knows? But it was replaced with this one. That
Interesting.
is a memorial to someone in the Lyman family.
Jim, do you know anything about that?
No. I had just assumed that the story saying it came from 6th Street was the end of the line. And I hadn't heard this other part that Linda just mentioned now. That's news to me.
Well, when I was looking in this book of remembrance that's to the left of the altar, there's something in there that says the font and the canopy were given in memory of, it wasn't C. Arthur, because it was before he died, but someone in the Lyman family. And I thought, well, wait a minute. These two things don't jive.
Interesting. So we've become somewhat of a detective, have we, in this role of historian?
Where did the marble font go?
Where,
Yeah.
oh, where, exactly.
Might it
Yeah,
be?
where did it go?
So Jim, you talk fondly of the beginning of St. Mark's and really dating back to the beginning of Minneapolis. And I'm talking specifically 1958, roughly. And you were telling me a little bit about how the Wells Memorial started and what that was. Can you talk a little bit more about the Wells
Well, we had a
Memorial?
brief history on it on Sunday morning just 2 weeks ago. Basically, the wife of the rector, Mr. Wells, got involved in trying to train a new immigrant and realized this young woman was not alone. There were many young immigrants who needed language and skill training if they were going to adapt as a citizen. And she recruited other members of the congregation. They got together with a bunch of sewing machines and taught skills, and we had a thriving activity at the 6th Street Church. As a matter of fact, part of the problem at 6th Street was the fact they didn't have enough room. And the story I heard was that when the beginning of the planning for this new building began, they started asking, the women involved started asking, where in the new building will we be? And there was sort of a subtle silence, and they began to realize that they hadn't been included in the planning. And they began to worry about whether or not the church would have enough money to get built. As a result, there was an extra campaign to build a building on the near north side, which became Wells Memorial House.
I see.
And it later became part of the United Way, but the program was very active, and we have a memorial window in the tower room commemorating the activities of that building. They also had a camp at Big Lake, and that camp was operated well into the 80s, but it became so expensive to keep up, and the upkeep wasn't keeping up with the need. And they finally decided to sell it. So the proceeds from selling the building and selling the camp and money collected through campaigns became the endowment that Wells now uses to make annual grants to other organizations in the metro area.
So would you say the Wells Foundation really is one of the major cornerstones of the history of the cathedral in terms of what we've contributed and how we've helped people over these years?
I think it's an easily overlooked important outreach. I mean, it's an outreach that began back in the 19th century and has carried here. We're in the 21st century, and it is still active.
That's wonderful. Well, you know, talking about the women being concerned about where are we going to have a place to work in this new building really speaks to how successful it was in the time and how important these immigrant women thought this program was.
Yes.
It was teaching them a vocation, it was giving them a skill set, it was helping them earn money for their family, and it made them part of the community. And as you've pointed out, it's still thriving and still being something that's really important today, and grants and monies are still being given out even today as we speak. Is that right?
What it does is that, and there are St. Markans who are actively involved in some of these programs, but what it does with the money, it assures that an organization that is serving people of a specific group, for example, has some support to keep on doing that.
there's two human interest little
Do tell.
things in that is actually the women who were pew holders because they were widows of pew holders had a vote when they were voting to sell the building downtown, and they voted no. And that was the reason, because there wasn't going to be
Interesting.
any money for.
That's why there might not be money, you see.
Right. And so they, on the second vote, same thing, took the third vote, and for the men to discover, oh, this isn't just sentimentality, there's something more going on here. And so that's one of the they agreed to set aside money for in the sale of the building. And of course, we got a very generous offer to buy this land. But the other,
People interest.
and I'm going to forget what it was. Oh, that, this is one time when the women prevailed. The other is they went to the vestry to ask for additional sewing machines from the one that Annie Wells was using. And the vestry said no, so they just said, okay, we'll go buy our own. And they did.
Those are the kinds of stories that not only speak to the cathedral, but speaks of the time. And dare I say, a time when women really didn't have a voice like they do today. And so that was their exercising, flexing their muscle where they could to get what they wanted, which I find so wonderful, that where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
We'll get it done one way or another. So Annie Wells is the woman we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's
Incidentally, you mentioned something about pews. When I first came here, every pew had a number.
Of course.
That's because people purchased which pew they would go sit in.
Okay. So it was kind of like going to the theater of sorts. You had an assigned seat.
And rank has its privilege.
And rank has its privilege. Yeah. Well, that was a different kind of hierarchy, in that day. And of course, we know that that's changed and not the same anymore.
To me, it reflects my long period here, the change in what you see in the congregation. When I first came here, it was all suits and hats. And the ushers, there was, I keep locking on his name, dressed as if he was going to a formal affair and sort of guided people around. It was, and then it got a little more open. And one year I was offered an opportunity to usher. And I said, well, that would be nice. And I was asked, do I have a black suit or a navy blue suit? And I said, well, no, I don't happen to. Let me know when you get one.
Well, again, different time, different traditions, if you will, and different mindset. But that's interesting. That was expected. That if you were to go to church, when you go to church, it was always a formal affair. You dressed in your Sunday best, you wore a hat, you had a suit, and in some ways you were showing respect and honor, I guess, in some ways, but you were also showing class, your social class status, I suppose, perhaps. Jim, you said that when you're in this neighborhood, you're in the Hewitt neighborhood. What did you mean by that?
Well, there are several buildings in the area that we've already mentioned Hennepin Avenue Methodist.
Yep.
The building across the street that's now an apartment building was the original headquarters for Northwestern National Life. And I can never remember the name of the Blake School girls' school. Northrop School. And I understand that a portion of the industrial arts program building, I'm blanking on names, I'm sorry, across the way. Yeah, anyway.
Oh, Dunwoody.
Dunwoody.
Okay.
Dunwoody.
An initial portion of Dunwoody was Hewitt, but he designed a number of churches. My most amusing thing about Hewitt was related to a chapel on the campus of the University of Minnesota, which is used by the Baptist students. And I was talking to the chaplain there, and I mentioned that I understood that their chapel was designed by Edwin Hewitt, who also designed St. Mark's Cathedral and Hampton Methodist. And he looked at me and said, "You know, I always wondered why this Baptist chapel looked like an Episcopal church."
There you go. Linda, you took over the helm of archivist and historian when Mary Cecilia accepted a position in Oregon, correct? Portland, Oregon. And I think you were telling me that at that time, Doug Fontaine had asked you to take over Mary's position. And I remember you telling me that you told him, "I have to think about it." Is that true?
Well, when he offered me the job to share with Mary, because she had not said she was leaving
Okay.
yet. And I said I had to think about it.
And what did your mother tell Doug Fontaine?
If she doesn't take it, I'll kill her.
And the rest is history and scene. And that was when? 1992? So.
And she left in May of 1992.
Okay, so somebody do the math for me. How many years has that been? That's been, well, 33.
Yeah.
You've been doing this for 33 years.
Well, it was part of my job at first, you know.
Yes.
because The archives came under the title
Okay.
of educator.
Okay. If you were to talk about one thing about being an archivist and historian for St. Mark's that just was so profound when you discovered it, does anything come to mind that's really special to you that you want to share with other people that might not know?
Well, there's several things. The people that I've met from other walks of life that have come here to do research. The first one, there were two women who came from the History Center when we were celebrating the 150th of the diocese, and they were doing an exhibit, and they came and looked through our stuff to find artifacts of Bishop Whipple, which they did use in the exhibit. And then one of those same women, Tilly Lasky, is her name? No. Well, yes, Tilly Lasky. And she came and did more research on Bishop Whipple's second wife, Evangeline, and wrote a book about Evangeline Whipple and Rose Cleveland, the sister of the president. And after Bishop Whipple died, Evangeline and Rose Cleveland moved to Italy together. So, but then another one was a woman whose name is Cynthia Gensheimer. And she did research on Annie Wells, which was fascinating. And then a couple of years later, I got a call from her that she was going to be presenting the book at the Minnesota History Center. And the interesting title of her book is Annie Jonas Wells, a Jewish daughter, Episcopal wife, independent intellectual. And so that's research that's been done in there where I've met these fascinating people. Another one was Marilyn Chiat, who is a local architectural historian. And she got a legacy grant to write a book on the beginning of the settlement house movement. So she came and researched the Wells Settlement House. So that was pretty fascinating too.
So, it's not just about facts and, dates and that sort of thing, but the people really have left a mark on your time here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's another one that is very profound, but it's also very personal. I was working in the file of Bishop Keeler, who was the bishop. He was actually bishop coadjutor when this cathedral became a cathedral. But I was going through his file, and I came across a picture attached to a Christmas card. And there was a note, "I thought you'd like to see this. This is the window that was given to St. Christopher's Church in Frankfurt, Germany, in memory of Bishop Keeler." And I looked at the picture and I thought, St. Christopher's Church? I know that window. And it's in a church called Christ the King. So I thought, what do I do with this? So I called the man who was rector. He had been rector. He had moved back to the States, and told him what I had found. And he said, well, when the church was built, it was St. Christopher's. But what's the Minnesota connection? So I started digging more Bishop Keeler's file and found that he was the bishop of the armed services. He brought UTO money from Minnesota to start that church.
Oh my goodness.
And then the touching part to me was that window, along with 5 others, were restored in 2005 in memory of my daughter.
Oh my goodness.
So it was one of those, whew.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So, yeah, personal things come up too. And what I was thinking is, anybody else going through that file and seeing that window would never make that connection.
No, correct. Right. So not only things that are happening here that are site-specific to St. Mark's, but people who've been associated with St. Mark's that left a mark elsewhere,
Yes, very
which
much so.
is a big piece that oftentimes, as you pointed out, are overlooked or forgotten
Yeah.
about.
It's actually more the diocese than St. Mark's.
Yes,
itself,
of course, the
since
diocese.
Bishop Keeler
Right,
was
right.
the diocesan, but
Yes, of course, right, right. But somehow it all kind of comes back
yeah.
here, right? Let's talk a little bit about the windows. I'm sorry, Jim.
Sidelight.
Yeah, go ahead.
She mentioned that Bishop Keeler was in charge of the chapels.
Yep.
It was because of that he was in Europe and met with Archbishop Fisher and convinced Fisher to have the conference here.
That's right, the 1954
Yeah.
conference.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about that. Just
Well, that's basically what, as she just mentioned, he had this ongoing, and he was very committed to making sure those chapels were successful. And
just to be clear, we're talking about Bishop Keeler.
Bishop Keeler,
Okay.
yes. And I have no idea how he got acquainted with Archbishop Fisher, but obviously it happened because Fisher, was undecided about location.
Sure.
And apparently, Keeler said, well, you ought to come to the United States, to Minnesota.
Oh.
And obviously, talking with people here in Minnesota, he was able to make a case for it, and that's what had happened. It was, I had the pleasure of going to a Sunday service and hearing Fisher speak. It was incredible.
It was incredible. I was part of it also as a teenager.
Yeah.
But there's one more thing I wanted to add to that. About 20 years ago, a young man from Japan came to visit And he had been a young person that came from Japan to the World Congress. And he came to Minneapolis because he wanted to see St. Mark's again.
Oh my goodness.
It was, and then I got a letter from him afterwards because I had
Oh,
taken him
really?
around. So,
How many years later was that?
well,
Well, if it was
54
20 20 years ago, you said?
yeah.
2005.
54 to,
Well, that would be almost 60 years later.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, correct.
But obviously, it made a memory.
It left an impact
Yeah.
on him, a memory.
I've got a picture of this young man upstairs who wasn't so young anymore.
No, no. I'm so delighted that you're bringing these things up because I'm learning so much from the two of you. This is wonderful. Let's talk a little bit more about the architecture. 1911, the Ascension window behind the high altar. This is the very first stained glass window of the cathedral, and designed by William Blandon, who was an Englishman, made by the Gotham Company in New York City, correct?
Correct.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what you know of the window, or the style that it was done in, or the stained glass, or anything like that?
I would call it very classic European.
Classic European?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. So probably some of it's obviously painted in to create the faces and the details. So not just stained glass, but then I'm guessing some of it's outlined or painted in to create the...
Yeah, I like to refer to a window like that as art glass, rather than mere stained, because it's more than stained glass. It's artistically finished.
Sure. So at that time, all of the other windows were just a Harlequin-style, two-color or three-color diamond-shaped glass, leaded glass,
Gold,
correct?
yeah,
Or like a
gold and
gold,
clear.
gold and clear. 1918, the Te Deum window was dedicated, or went in, installed, I should say, designed by Charles Connick of Boston, Massachusetts, dedicated by Bishop Freeman, designed as a family memorial for the Christian family.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
You know, without my window notes,
It,
I haven't committed a lot of that
that's
to memory.
okay. That's totally fine. I think I remember, I wrote down that it commemorated the family, which included George, Henry, Lenora, and Paul, and their children.
Yes. Yeah.
And at that time, I think you said it was said to be the largest conic window in the country,
Yeah.
designed by Connick.
And that cobalt blue glass is very typical of conic windows.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
And you notice it's not. this one.
Correct. Right. Yes. There's.
But you can tell which side windows
You can
are
with this.
conic.
Yeah.
And you can see over there that most of them are not.
Well, basically, that was a wartime thing, wasn't it? They couldn't get the
They
cobalt.
couldn't get the cobalt
Yeah.
anymore.
Right. So the windows follow the story of Christ
In his life and ministry,
in a
yes.
clockwise fashion, starting in the Hewitt Chapel, correct?
Right.
And then it goes down the west side aisle,
And up.
crosses over the
East aisle.
right, but the why can't I say it? The vestibule, right when you walk in.
Narthex?
The narthex, thank you. I was blanking on the word narthex. Crosses the narthex and then picks up in the back corner and then comes forward. And halfway through the east aisle, the blue color changes in the window. And that was because the government put a limit on the use of the mineral cobalt during wartime. And so they had to switch over to a lighter color blue, which is why you see the difference in the color. And then post-war, the cobalt came back again, and the last three were then done in that cobalt blue. which you probably don't know until somebody points it out to you. You don't really
Well,
see it.
unless you're really observant, you might not even detect the difference in color. You just see the blue.
Correct, correct.
But they really are quite different.
They're different, there's no question. Yeah.
They are, but it kind of speaks to how we kind of gloss over and we don't maybe look at things as carefully as we could.
I wish I had done a better history of the windows, because the clerestory windows are sort of an interesting growth history, I mean, or time history, I should say, because when I first came here, most of the upper windows were still the yellow and white glass,
Yeah,
the clear glass.
Harlequin, that diamond pattern.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And of course, as a result, the interior was much brighter. But at the same time, one by one, windows started appearing as people dedicated them. And then we had, what was the last 5?
All at once.
All in one swell foop,
Oh, wow.
all dedicated by the same family.
Oh, dear. Okay.
And so 2 of them are my favorites now. One is the history of the diocese, which starts with the Bishop of All Outdoors coming to Minnesota, and includes Whipple and his wife, and John Johnson and McGobble. And the connection between those 3 is the fact that the bishop, I'm blind, Jackson Kemper was his name. Jackson Kemper is buried in the Fond du Lac Cathedral, which was the church I attended when I was in Wisconsin. But the Kemper confirmed in McGobble, who later became a companion of Whipple. And the 2 of them traveled together, particularly to the Indian mission sites, and were very much involved in trying to ease the stress and pain that was happening in the early 60s. And McGobble was the first Native American ordained Episcopal priest.
And he's depicted in one of these windows.
He's
Yeah.
depicted
Can you
in the
tell me where it falls in the lineup?
It's this one over the second arch.
Oh, right there. So if we count from the altar back, 1, 2, 3, 4.
The 4th window, yes.
And there's another window with some more contemporary people depicted.
Oh, yes.
I think Jimmy Carter is in one of them.
Yes, that's the Peacemaker's window.
The Peacemaker's window, which reminds me, I love the fact that we've put something contemporary, that depicts contemporary people, or at least of the time people. It reminds me of the National Cathedral and
Yes.
one of their windows, which
Yes.
does the very same thing.
That's one of the things they emphasized when you tour the National Cathedral, that we have contemporary windows as well as
Right.
old ones.
Right. And it just keeps it relevant and it keeps it current and speaks to the times,
Yeah.
right?
Well, the other contemporary window is the Pentecost window,
Okay.
because of the instrumentation in their computers and so forth.
Now you're pointing, but
It's the last window
on the
on,
west,
on this side.
on the west side,
Yeah.
on the west aisle.
Yeah.
Okay, on top, the last
Yeah.
one. Okay. So it talks about science and you were saying,
Well, what it does is make obvious that we understand that communication has modern ways.
yeah, technology.
Technology is there.
Right, right.
And of course, we're doing that. We're broadcasting video live on Sunday morning and during special events. That kind of thing is what the church needs to be doing to be relevant in the 21st century.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about the Hewitt Chapel earlier in being a memorial for Edwin Hewitt's daughter, Helen. What I find fascinating about that space, and I think both of you have told me this at different times, is that it's a miniature version of the cathedral. It's like it has all of the art and architecture and carvings and detail of a full-scale chapel or cathedral, but a smaller version of it.
I like to say it encapsulates what Gothic architecture is all about.
And talk more about that.
Well, you have stone, you have brick, you have wood, you have metal, you have art glass, you have painted, you have all of the possible sources of creative art put together in one space, in an area where you have arches and the idea of the Gothic arch, which made buildings stronger and taller and wider.
That's probably the most recognizable characteristic of a Gothic building is the pointed arch.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes. But Gothic architecture is much more than that.
Oh, of course.
It's more than just the arches. It's how you put it together. I mean, you look at these carved screens. They incorporate many of those same styles in a variety of ways.
Right.
And that's why I like to say it sort of encapsulates what Gothic church architecture is really all about.
Linda, talk about the Hewitt Chapel. What does that mean to you?
Well, you know, there are so many artists represented in there that it's almost like being in a museum, except that it's
That's
a
true.
chapel.
That's
But
true.
there are so many. I mean, the winged lion made out of brass is designed by a woman. Her name is Heidi Hoy, and it was created out at the Minnetonka Arts Center in memory of one of our bishop's daughters. So that's another memorial. The first carved pillar, which the three pillars show various uses of hands. The first pillar is the laying on of hands, and that was given in memory of Greer Wheaton, who was a longtime member. And that was carved by John Rood, the same carver as did the outside. The second column is baptism, and that was carved by a man named Tony Capone. So there's so many different artists in there.
Isn't that
Yeah,
interesting?
Tony Capone had an art park south of St. Paul. He was quite famous locally.
Yeah. Well, and then Rubens not only created the fresco above the triptych,
The triptych, yes.
but he created the screen to mimic the wood screens to mimic what was already in place over here for the organ, to really set it off.
Right, right.
So-
To create more symmetry
Yes.
or continuity, if you will.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So many artists.
It's a lost craft. It's something that would be nearly impossible to replicate today if it were built brand new from the ground up.
The kind of wood carving.
The kind of wood carving.
The closest you came recently, more recently, is the two riddles on either side of the altar. They replaced gold curtains, and the carving that was done on them, that was done in the,
Oh, I don't remember the date,
it was done in the 80s, I think.
but I've seen lots of pictures
Right.
with the curtains.
Yeah.
It's much more attractive with these new riddles.
Well,
It
it-
looks more complete.
It feels like it's carrying the weight of the stained glass window. The proportion and scales a little bit better, I think. And it works. It works really well.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah, they
seems to
wanted, they
set
wanted
off
it to
the-
match the width of the window.
correct, exactly, right. Well, we're getting close to wrapping things up for today, but I just wanted both of you, I want to give you both an opportunity to maybe mention one other thing that might be on your mind, or if not, we can keep it for another talk in the future. This is, like I mentioned before, part 2 of our docent interview series. Is there anything you'd like to say that we haven't already talked about that you'd like to mention?
Well, one of the things I think that Linda can agree with is that we have seen a change in dynamics with each dean. And each one has left a mark of a different sort. Some with regard to is more positive than others, I suppose. But to me, it's interesting that through this, we have a congregation which adores music, regards. I think the music programs here. Music is one of the reasons I came and stayed. I was in the choir back in those younger days, and the ongoing movement has always been there, and we say we are facing a different future, and I think the last decade in particular has emphasized how that future has introduced more uncertainty than we ever had in the past. And I have to give credit to the staff in trying to emphasize both in programmatically and in liturgy and the sermons and so forth, the need to stay together, to work together. And I am particularly pleased that seems to coincide with our new bishop. And that understanding what our faith is about and what faith can really mean is probably the most important thing we have to learn.
Linda?
I ditto that about our new bishop. We're very fortunate. Well, one of the things that I really wanted to call attention to was that new, but very old lion that is on the back wall of the nave that was found down in the undercroft while it was still dirt, before it was the columbarium. It was found by women setting up for the rummage sale, and it was in several pieces. But this woman, Ann Stordahl, happened to think, she knew Theo Park. She happened to think, well, maybe St. Mark's would like this. And so she gave it to Theo, and he brought it over here, and I said, of course we wanted it. And so we had this, talking about dying arts, we have this stone carver who has done a lot of work around this cathedral, who took it on as a project to put it back together and restore it so that it could be put on the wall.
And do we know the origins of it? Where did it come from?
She is not sure what the origin is. Ann Stordahl thought it came from the 6th Street building, and maybe it did.
Sure.
But that newspaper article that I read didn't say anything about that. But she thinks it's much older than that. And she said it's Carrara marble, possibly even came from Italy.
Sure.
And the restoration job that she did on it was astounding.
Wonderful. We'll have to take a
I-
closer look now that you
And-
mentioned it.
Well, and it has not been dedicated yet since we put it up. So hopefully that is to come.
Our work is never done, is it, Linda?
Yeah, that brings to mind to me, we had for several years an annual arts festival. And during those periods of time, we had dramatic presentations, choral presentations, commissions for artwork, and this sort of thing. Many of the things, the Paul Granlund pieces and so forth, were part of that. And it's one of those things where I guess it's a memory now more than in anything else, but it was really an exciting time every summer when we had the arts festival. And I kind of miss that, don't you? Of course, part of the reason I miss it is the fact I was in plays in it.
You were an actor.
Yes.
Well, thank you both so much. Jim Jacobson, Linda Shalene, this was a pleasure. I'm so grateful for your time. I think I can call you my friends, so this was wonderful. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, your experience, and everything you know about the cathedral. And this concludes our part 2 of our docent interview series, and I look forward to talking with you again. Thanks again for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.